Welcome to SomeGuy's Garage, a new video tool, I guess you could say, in the shop today. We're going to take a look at this digital microscope from Andonstar. It's a 7-inch 3-lens digital microscope that hopefully with future tool reviews I'll be able to take a closer look at certain features and be able to share those with you, since this does do video as well. But should be an interesting addition to the shop in general, being able to get a close-up look at anything I'm working on, especially with those really small sort of things. But today we'll open it up, unbox it, get it put together, and check out some of the features on it. I've never used one of these before, so we'll go on this journey together. But first things first, let's open it up and get it unboxed. So starting out, yeah, that's generally what it looks like. There's a stand with a display, and I guess that's a lens and some lights there to look at stuff, so we'll probably need that at some point. There is a component list. There is some steps involved to assemble this. Looks like 6 easy steps there. And then under here, we actually have the microscope itself, I guess. So that looks like the display. Up here we have cables. So there's a plus, minus, and a power button with a couple of, this looks like USB mini, regular USB and a barrel connector for something, plus a HDMI cable of some sort. Cool. Pull out some more of the foam here. Not sure what that part's for, but we'll keep going in. Remote control, that's kind of neat. Looks like some of the assembly hardware there. Another cable, USB of some sort, an SD card, 32 gigs. Something, again, holder of some sort, some screws, a USB power adapter brick. Looks like, I'm going to guess those are the lenses that come with it. And then here in the back, okay, there we go, another big piece of foam comes out. There is the base plate for it with the 2 lights. Yeah, so there's some LED lights there, that's the base plate. And then under that is the actual stand. I guess this is the thing that kind of probably goes something like that, holds it together. And finally, the rod that's going to hold everything up. But that's everything that comes in the box. All right, and let's just take a look at the assembly instructions. I'm probably going to do most of this off camera because there will be a few steps, but looks like attach, you know what, let's try doing some of this together. First things first, we'll get the foam off of this. We first screw this in here. So this screw into there. This piece gets attached here. So it slides down like this and screws on there. Okay, going to take a bit of fiddling. I'm going to do the rest of this off camera here, and I'll let you know how the actual assembly goes. Okay, there we go. Set up. I have the little SD card under the actual microscope here, and you can see the picture. Fairly actually simple to put together once you get it figured out. This is actually a slide viewer, and they give you some slides and rail clips as well. There's a couple extra lenses like I mentioned. Not too sure what that hardware is for yet, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. And cables and all of that sort of stuff and the remote control. But really you don't even need to plug all of that stuff in. Those are just, you know, if you're viewing slides or something else or want to use the other lenses, that's where that comes in. But otherwise this just attaches here on the one pole. This slides into the base. You kind of pull the lens screws out down here, and these screws out, the whole thing slips down, and that's the actual microscope lens here is on this part of it, which is directly attached to the camera, or sorry, the screen. The camera part and the screen and the microscope tube is all there with an exchangeable lens at the bottom. And then the power cable, it plugs into the wall on the USB side, and the split one end goes to the power on the lights here, and then the other one to power the screen. But fairly simple to actually get it set up once you're going. And initial impressions, as you can probably see on the camera, picture quality is quite good and it focuses down nice and easily. And I'm shocked at how nice and clear the screen is as well. So it's a really good clear view of the thing that you're magnifying. All right, now that I have it set up and running, I'm going to walk you through the menu. It does have a remote control here. There's a little sensor there that helps go through all the different things. So you can change the resolution. Goes up to 4K Ultra HD at different frame rates, but full HD as well. So you do get some options on recording there. You get exposure, compensation, and options. You can put date stamps, adjust the sharpness of the screen. You can freeze what's on the screen. So if you wanted to hold something that you have shown, you can actually freeze it there to see it permanently without anything moving. You can adjust contrast, and you can adjust some color as well. And then there is a second menu here. So if we flip over there, you can add grid lines to it. So you can add a bunch of crosses if you're trying to identify stuff. There's date, time, language, frequency. So if you're hooked up to a TV, you can set it at 50 or 60 hertz. And there's also a, we definitely don't want to delete stuff yet, but there's also a setting, at least on the remote, for NTSC and PAL, it looks like, as well. And we can look at the version. So that's the version that's running on this as well. But yeah, there's a few settings, and then the remote just gives you access to most of that sort of stuff. So you can zoom in with the digital zoom. You can do that on the buttons on the front too, but there is a digital zoom. And given that the camera is 4K, there is actually some room to zoom in given the size of the screen and still get the detail without losing a lot of the resolution. You can also do the freeze here. So if I do the freeze like that, you can see I can move it now and it doesn't go anywhere. We can bring that back in. Can make things brighter or lighter with the remote. And there's a bunch of other settings too. There's even a rotate on here, so you can flip it upside down if you want, so it moves the other way around, which could be kind of handy. But yeah, lots of stuff on a remote as well. And then in terms of capturing things, there is a picture button here, so you can take a picture if you'd like. And then if you hit OK, it will start recording with whatever your settings. So you can see in the top corner up here, we're actually recording now. And if you hit OK again, it will stop recording and shows how much time you have left. This is on 4K, and you get a couple hours worth of recording with just the included 32 gig SD card or micro SD card that's put into the back. But that's just basic setup. I'm gonna get a memory card in here and grab a few things that we can actually look at under the microscope and see what it can do. All right, back with a few things to look at here. I've got a NVMe storage disk of some sort, a CPU. I also have a piece of sandpaper and a laser etched screwdriver tip from Wera. I've also switched out to the L lens, which has a larger viewing distance, so you're further away from the object, but you don't get quite as much zoom. We'll switch back to one of the other lenses in a bit. And the other great thing is I have set it up to record. So by hitting OK here on the screen, I can start recording what we're seeing on the screen here now. So as you can see, I've already kind of focused in on this with the focus knob here. And we're looking down here right in between there at some of the little chips and components on the board here. But as you can see, it's a very sharp image, and you can get really up close and detailed images of the actual drive here. And same on the backside. You can see all the traces here, including some of the squiggles they use to match the path lengths. So that's pretty cool. And as you can see, it is quite sharp. There is the ability to zoom a little bit with the lens here, so we can zoom out a bit. Otherwise, you have to change the whole thing up and down on the table. And as we zoom out, then we have to focus again. But fairly simple in that sense. We'll zoom back down in here a bit and focus again. So that's with an NVMe. Looking at the CPU here, again, we'll just make sure we're in focus. There is a bit of vibration, as you can see, if you touch things, but once you're static, it's not too bad. So that's actually the bottom of the pin grid on a, well, we can look at this now, a 2 gigahertz Intel Core 2 Duo from way back in the day here. Well, maybe not way back in the day, but can see all of that really nice up and close and crisp and all the components and that sort of stuff on it. I'll take another look here at the screwdriver. So this will be something you might see in some of my future videos where I'll use this to get up close shots of different things that I'm testing. But you can see very clearly now all the laser marking on the actual screwdriver tip from Wera here. It's kind of neat that you can just barely make it out in person, but then under the microscope here, it gives you a very clear view of exactly what's going on with that. And finally, sandpaper here. So you can see, I'll again get this into focus, but you can see all the crystalline structure of the sandpaper itself and the grit that makes up, and my finger apparently, the grit that makes up the actual sandpaper itself. One other thing I'll do at some point here is once we switch to another lens, so you can just start to make out some of the pixels on the phone screen here at this zoom, but once we get closer, you'll be able to see those in even more detail. So I'll just stop recording there. And what I'm going to do next is switch out the lens. Okay, so switched off the lens. There's the old one, and now have the kind of, you could call it the medium lens. This lets you get a lot closer, and we'll start recording here so you can see what I'm seeing. So we're recording once more. And clearly we're just that much closer to everything. Everything's a bit smaller, but still really sharp. And we should be able to even get a little bit closer than this. This one allows you to get down to within 12 millimeters of the object. So we'll actually use the rear adjustment here. just to come even closer, right down into it. So should be pretty good there, and we'll get this focused again. So there we go. As you can see, very nice and sharp and crisp and up close with everything. Less depth of field though, so you do have to adjust focus as the distance from the object changes. But we're getting down to now several components. You can do the same on the CPU here. Just taking a look at some of the writing again, so we'll get that into focus once more. But there you can actually see the writing E4400, and you're starting to see all the like little micro scratches and stuff that are actually on the chip here. That was some interesting stuff there. Wherever that went, yeah, you can see the scratches there on the edge of things. Takes a little more to adjust the light. There we go. Actually, that's a bit better, but you can see all of that. Take a look at the screwdriver tip once more here. We'll get that in close. And like I said, you do lose some depth of field here, but we'll kind of try and focus on one of the blades. But starting to see even more of the detail and structure of all of the parts of the screwdriver here and how they actually form and machine the tip and then laser mark it. Or we can take a look at the sandpaper again. And once more, we'll focus down here. And there you can see even more of the individual particles they're using there to make up the sandpaper. And once more, we'll slide the phone in here. I'm just gonna have to come up just a little bit to make sure I can focus, but we'll find a nice spot here. So it looks like the video length of one of my shorts. But as you can see here, you can actually see the individual pixels that make up the screen of the phone. So again, that's pretty neat how that works. And you can see Nipex there and all of the little red dots that make up the logo, as well as I guess it looks like some blues and greens that actually make up the white text that is the Nipex logo itself. But as you can see, we're getting some pretty awesome detail of what's going on at a very small level, of course with a microscope, and can record this. So I'll stop that recording once more, and we'll switch out for the one last lens that comes with this. All right, and back now with the highest zoom lens. Probably one I'm not going to use much of. It just is getting a little ridiculous on how close it can get, but for some purposes this might be really useful. Just not for this sort of garage or electronics or those sort of things that I would do. This would be more maybe biology uses or something like that. I'm zoomed in fairly tight on one of the pins that make up the actual connection from this chip, from this board, from this storage, whatever you want to call it. So you can see there each one of the individual pins and like the little scratches where they've been plugged and unplugged from a drive or from a socket where the drive would go. Let's see if we can find some of the other components here. There's some stuff down here. There we go. And the depth of field is very narrow, so you kind of do have to search for the zoom. So if you want to see the top versus the bottom of the component, there's some zooming in or focusing that you need to do to get that because the depth of field is so narrow. But flipping that out, we'll take a look at the CPU, see if we can find some of the text on there, just as another comparison point. So there we go, we're in rough focus, should let us find something. There we go, some letters. So there's the copyright symbol. Let's get that sharp, there we go. So you can see, and some little piece of dust as well. That is actually a piece of dust or fluff or something like that. But yeah, you can see very, very up close and all the details on that board. If we look at sandpaper, I'm going to skip the screwdriver because it probably won't fit under the lens, but we'll try some sandpaper here. Again, zooming to focus that. You can use the focus knob or zoom in and out, especially with this lens where it's fine and precise, I guess you'd say. The depth of field in the actually viewing area you have is so small. So you could focus this way. I find that rattles around a little bit more, and using the zoom is actually a bit easier to get it into focus. But there with the sandpaper, you can really see that crystalline structure that makes up the sandpaper, all those little particles that are doing the work. And last but not least, we'll throw the phone back under here. I'll have to lift this up a bit, get it underneath. But we'll find some sort of pixel here and get that sharpened up. And there, at this point, you can really see all the individual dots on the screen that are making up anything that is part of the picture here. So some letters and numbers. That looks like there's the Knipex logo that we were looking at earlier. I'll just try and sharpen that up a bit more. Pretty good there. But yeah, you can see quite literally every dot on the screen that makes up the actual image. All right, back to the L lens that I had on before. This is probably the most practical. It gives you a lot of depth of field. And for the stuff I'm going to be doing, likely electronics and looking at tools and things like that, it gives me enough resolution to show you guys some of the up close and personal details of the actual things that we're looking at or testing on the channel. So that's likely where you'll see most of this is in future tests. Now that I can record video of stuff really up close, we can take a closer look at the different tools and some of the fine features that might be in those using this microscope, this digital microscope. But anyway, if you have any questions about the Andonstar digital microscope, let me know in the comments below. If you're not already subscribed, please consider it. And as always, thanks for watching.